4 years ago, in the early hours of a cold February morning, the ground shook across the length of Ukraine's eastern and northern borders. Russian missiles struck airports, military bases, and government buildings. Columns of Russian armor, thousands of tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and support trucks poured across the border from 3 directions. Paratroopers landed at Hostomel Airport outside Kyiv. Naval infantry stormed the southern coast. The full weight of what was supposed to be the second most powerful military on Earth fell upon a country that the Kremlin had publicly stated would collapse within 72 hours. It did not collapse, it fought. And 4 years later, on the anniversary of that morning, the anniversary of the most catastrophic strategic miscalculation in modern military history, Ukrainian forces delivered their response. Not with speeches, not with ceremonies, not with symbolic gestures, with fire, steel, and precision across the entire front line in a coordinated night of operations that reminded every Russian soldier in Ukraine of a simple truth. You are still here, you are still losing, and the army you invaded is stronger now than it was the day you crossed the border. This is the story of what Ukrainian forces gave Russia on the 4th anniversary of a war that was supposed to last 3 days. 4 years ago, the Russian battle plan was built on a fantasy. Ukrainian resistance would be minimal. The Ukrainian army, outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded, would surrender or disintegrate within days. The Ukrainian government would flee. The Ukrainian people would accept the new reality. Russian soldiers were told to pack their dress uniforms for the victory parade in Kyiv. Some carried police riot gear instead of combat equipment, expecting to manage crowds of grateful civilians rather than fight a determined enemy. The fantasy died in the first week. Ukrainian forces destroyed the Russian airborne assault on Hostomel. Ukrainian ambushes annihilated Russian armored columns in the forests north of Kyiv. Ukrainian territorial defense units, civilians who picked up weapons and fought for their neighborhoods, turned every street, every village, every bridge into a killing ground. The Russian advance on Kyiv stalled, bled, and ultimately retreated in humiliation. The 3-day war became a 3-month catastrophe, and then a 3-year war of attrition that has consumed the Russian military like a fire consuming dry wood. And now, 4 years in, the fire burns hotter than ever. The anniversary night operations began at sundown. Across the front line, from the northeastern sectors to the southeastern zones where the heaviest fighting has raged for months, Ukrainian units had been given a simple directive from their commanders. Make this a night that the Russian invaders remember. They did. The first strike of the anniversary night fell on a Russian trench system in the eastern sector. A reinforced Ukrainian assault platoon, 32 soldiers from one of Ukraine's most decorated infantry brigades, had been preparing for this operation for over a week. Their target was a Russian company-sized position dug into a ridgeline that had been a thorn in Ukrainian operations for months. The position was well fortified, bunkers with timber and earth overhead cover, machine gun nests with interlocking fields of fire, minefields on the western approaches, and a company of approximately 100 Russian soldiers manning the defenses. The Ukrainian assault began at 2200 hours. Under cover of a brief, intense artillery preparation that lasted exactly 4 minutes, long enough to suppress the defenders, short enough to preserve surprise, the assault platoon advanced from 2 directions simultaneously. They moved fast, covering the open ground in under 3 minutes, breaching the minefield through lanes that Ukrainian combat engineers had secretly cleared over the preceding 2 nights. By the time the Russian defenders realized the artillery had lifted and infantry was upon them, the first Ukrainian soldiers were already in the trenches. The close-quarters fighting lasted 2 hours. Bunker by bunker, trench section by trench section. The Ukrainian soldiers fought with a ferocity and discipline that overwhelmed the Russian defenders, many of whom were mobilized troops with minimal training, facing their first real combat. By midnight, the position was in Ukrainian hands. 63 Russian soldiers were confirmed killed. 22 surrendered. The remainder fled east into the darkness. The Ukrainian assault platoon suffered 8 wounded, none killed. A fortified position that had resisted weeks of Russian defense fell in 120 minutes on the night of the anniversary. 4 years ago, Russia believed Ukrainian soldiers would not fight. Tonight, Ukrainian soldiers proved, again, that they fight harder, smarter, and with more courage than anything the Russian military can field against them. What shocked you more about this trench assault? A. The speed, 120 minutes to take a fortified position. B. The casualty ratio, 63 Russian killed versus 0 Ukrainian killed. C. That 22 Russians chose surrender over fighting. Tell us in the comments. The second strike of the anniversary night hit a Russian supply column approximately 20 kilometers behind the front in the southeastern sector. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones had been tracking Russian logistics patterns in the area for days, and intelligence analysts identified a window. A column of 11 trucks, fuel tankers, ammunition carriers, and general supply vehicles would be moving along a secondary road between 0100 and 0200 hours, resupplying forward Russian positions that were burning through ammunition at unsustainable rates. Ukrainian artillery was pre-positioned, FPV drone teams were scrambled, and at 0130, when the column was confirmed on the road by a surveillance drone's thermal camera, 11 hot engines stretching along a kilometer of road like a string of glowing beads, the order was given. The lead truck and the rear truck were hit simultaneously, artillery rounds on the lead vehicle, an FPV drone on the rear. The column was trapped. What followed was 15 minutes of systematic destruction. FPV drones dove into the stalled vehicles one by one. Artillery shifted to the center of the column. Fuel tankers erupted in fireballs that illuminated the countryside for kilometers. Ammunition trucks detonated in secondary explosions that sent shockwaves rolling across the frozen fields. Russian drivers who abandoned their vehicles and ran were tracked by thermal cameras and engaged by drone operators. 9 of 11 trucks were destroyed. The 2 surviving vehicles, trapped between burning wreckage, were abandoned by their crews and later destroyed by Ukrainian artillery to prevent recovery. The supplies that were supposed to sustain Russian forward operations for days, gone in 15 minutes. Russian positions in the sector would report critical shortages within 48 hours. 4 years ago, Russia believed its logistics would flow unimpeded into a conquered Ukraine. Tonight, Ukrainian forces proved that every Russian truck, every Russian supply route, every Russian logistics plan in Ukraine exists only at Ukraine's sufferance and can be erased at any moment. Stay with this. The anniversary night was not over. The next operation struck at the heart of Russian command. The third strike targeted a Russian battalion command post, a cluster of buildings in a partially destroyed settlement approximately 10 kilometers behind the front. Ukrainian signals intelligence had been monitoring the position for weeks, and drone surveillance had confirmed the presence of a command element. Communications antennas, officer vehicles, security perimeter, and a pattern of radio traffic consistent with a battalion-level headquarters. The strike was delivered by HIMARS at 0300 hours, 2 precision rockets 30 seconds apart. The first rocket struck the main command building, the second hit the communications vehicle park adjacent to it. The thermal feed from the Ukrainian surveillance drone showed both impacts, followed by the collapse of the primary structure and fires that spread through the vehicle park. Intercepted Russian communications in the minutes following the strike confirmed the damage. The battalion commander, a lieutenant colonel, was reported killed along with his operations officer and at least 4 additional staff members. The battalion's primary and backup communication systems were destroyed simultaneously, severing contact between the headquarters and the 4 companies it controlled. For the next 72 hours, those companies operated without centralized command, receiving no orders, no fire support coordination, no resupply instructions, and no guidance on how to respond to the Ukrainian operations that were being conducted across the sector throughout the anniversary night. 4 years ago, Russian generals expected to be giving victory speeches from Ukrainian government buildings. Tonight, a Russian lieutenant colonel died in the rubble of a command post that he thought was hidden and safe, killed by a weapon system that did not exist in the Ukrainian arsenal 4 years ago. The 4th operation was a drone hunter's night. Across a 30-kilometer stretch of the front, Ukrainian FPV drone teams conducted what can only be described as a coordinated hunt, a simultaneous multi-team operation targeting Russian armored vehicles, observation posts, and crew-served weapon positions. 14 separate FPV drone teams operated throughout the night, each assigned specific sectors and target priorities. The results were devastating. By dawn, the combined drone teams had confirmed the destruction or serious damage of 6 Russian armored vehicles, including 2 tanks, 3 BMPs, and 1 armored personnel carrier. 4 Russian observation posts, eliminating the eyes that directed Russian fire onto Ukrainian positions. 3 mortar positions, silencing guns that had been harassing Ukrainian troops for weeks, and an estimated 35 to 40 individual Russian soldiers engaged and hit by precision drone strikes while manning positions, moving between bunkers, or attempting to resupply forward posts under cover of darkness. The FPV drone operators worked in shifts, one team resting while another flew, maintaining constant pressure throughout the night. The Russian soldiers on the receiving end had no respite. Every time a head appeared above a trench line, every time a vehicle moved, every time a soldier stepped outside a bunker, a drone could be watching and a drone could be diving. The psychological effect of 12 continuous hours of drone threat, on top of the artillery strikes, the trench assault, and the logistics destruction happening simultaneously across the sector, pushed Russian morale on this section of the front to what intercepted communications described as the lowest point in months. 4 years ago, drones were a novelty on the battlefield, small, fragile, used mainly for observation. Tonight, Ukrainian drone operators conducted over 150 sorties in a single night, destroying millions of dollars in Russian equipment and proving that the drone revolution Ukraine pioneered is now the dominant force on the modern battlefield. How many FPV drone sorties do you think Ukrainian forces average per day across the entire front? A. 500, 1,000. B. 1,000, 2,000. C. Over 2,000. The answer may surprise you. Drop your guess below. The 5th and final operation of the anniversary night was the quietest, and in many ways the most chilling. Ukrainian sniper teams operating across 3 separate sections of the front conducted coordinated operations targeting Russian officers and specialists. The details of sniper operations are rarely disclosed in full. Operational security demands that methods, positions, and capabilities remain classified. But confirmed reports from the anniversary night indicate that Ukrainian snipers registered at least 7 confirmed kills during the hours of darkness. 3 Russian officers identified by their equipment and behavior patterns. 2 communications operators targeted to isolate their units, and 2 machine gun crews whose positions had been mapped during preceding days. 7 shots, 7 kills, 7 Russians who were alive when the anniversary began and dead before it ended. 4 years ago, Russia sent its army expecting 3 days of easy conquest. Tonight, Ukrainian snipers reminded every Russian officer on the front that the price of standing on Ukrainian soil is paid not in days, but in lives, one precisely aimed round at a time. Is this 4-year record of Russian failure the result of Ukrainian strength, Russian incompetence, or both? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Now the economics of the anniversary night. Let us add up what Ukrainian forces took from Russia in a single night. A night that falls exactly 4 years after the Kremlin told its people that Ukraine would fall in 72 hours. Trench assault, 1 Russian company position captured, 63 Russian soldiers killed, 22 captured, fortified position lost with all its equipment, bunkers, weapons, and ammunition. Estimated Russian losses, $4 to $7 million, including personnel, fortification investment, and captured equipment. Supply column destruction, 9 trucks plus cargo, fuel, ammunition, food, and equipment worth an estimated $8 to $12 million. Logistics disruption to forward units, additional operational cost of $2 to $3 million. Battalion command post strike, lieutenant colonel and staff killed, communications destroyed, estimated loss of $3 to $5 million in personnel and equipment, plus the operational cost of 72 hours without battalion-level command, estimated at an additional $3 to $5 million in degraded combat effectiveness. FPV drone operations, 6 armored vehicles, 4 observation posts, 3 mortar positions, 35 to 40 personnel. Estimated losses of $8 to $14 million in equipment and trained personnel. Sniper operations, 7 confirmed kills including 3 officers. Estimated training and replacement cost of $1 to $2 million. Total estimated Russian losses on the anniversary night, $27 to $48 million. Total Ukrainian expenditure across all 5 operations, artillery ammunition, HIMARS rockets, FPV drones, mines, sniper ammunition, and operational costs, estimated $4 to $6 million. $6 million to inflict $48 million in damage, a cost-exchange ratio of 8 to 1 in a single night. But the numbers, devastating as they are, do not capture what this night truly means. If facts like these prove that 4 years of war have only made Ukraine stronger, type truth in the comments. What has impressed you most about Ukraine's evolution over 4 years of fighting? Tell us below. 4 years ago, the Ukrainian military was a fraction of what it is today. 4 years ago, Ukraine did not have HIMARS, did not have a drone force producing 7 million aircraft per year, did not have the signals intelligence capability to intercept and exploit Russian communications in real time, did not have special operations forces with 3 years of continuous combat experience, did not have an artillery corps that can coordinate precision strikes across hundreds of kilometers of front in a single night. Everything that happened on this anniversary night, the trench assault, the convoy ambush, the command post strike, the drone hunt, the sniper operations, was impossible 4 years ago. Every capability was built during the war. Every tactic was forged in combat. Every operator was trained under fire. The Ukrainian military of today is not the same force that Russia invaded in February 4 years ago. It is something far more dangerous, an army that has been hardened, modernized, and sharpened by 4 years of the most intense conventional warfare in Europe since 1945. Russia, by contrast, has moved in the opposite direction. 4 years ago, Russia had thousands of modern tanks in storage. Now it is pulling 60-year-old T-55s from rusting warehouses and welding scrap metal onto them in a desperate attempt to survive against Ukrainian drones. 4 years ago, Russia had trained officers and experienced NCOs leading its units. Now, over 6,400 confirmed Russian officers have been killed, and the replacements are men with weeks of experience leading platoons into battles their predecessors would have avoided. 4 years ago, Russia's defense industry operated at peacetime capacity with reserves to spare. Now it runs triple shifts, relies on components smuggled through sanctions networks, and still cannot replace what Ukraine destroys each day. Consider the human dimension of this trajectory. The Russian soldiers who crossed the border 4 years ago, for all their flaws, for all the arrogance and cruelty of their mission, were at least trained professionals and contract servicemen who had chosen military careers. The Russian soldiers on the front line today are a different population entirely. Many are mobilized men, pulled from civilian life, given rudimentary training, and sent to hold positions that their predecessors could not hold with better equipment and more experience. Many are recruited from prisons, offered freedom in exchange for 6 months of combat that few survive. Many are foreign recruits, men from Nepal, India, Cuba, and across Central Asia, lured by promises of Russian citizenship and wages, thrown onto a front line where they do not speak the language, do not understand the terrain, and do not know why they are fighting. This is what the Russian military has become after 4 years of war against Ukraine. Not the fearsome colossus that the world feared in February 4 years ago, but a hollowed-out machine running on desperation, coercion, and the dwindling reserves of a Soviet industrial base that was never designed to sustain a war of this scale and duration. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian soldier of today is perhaps the most experienced and capable conventional warfare fighter on Earth. 4 years of continuous combat has produced an army where even junior NCOs have more real battlefield experience than most Western officers accumulate in entire careers. Ukrainian platoon leaders make tactical decisions under fire that would challenge battalion commanders in other armies. Ukrainian drone operators have more flight hours in combat conditions than the drone programs of most NATO countries combined. Ukrainian artillerymen can execute fire missions with a speed and precision that comes only from doing it thousands of times under conditions where every second of delay costs lives. The asymmetry is no longer about numbers. Russia still has more soldiers, but Ukraine has better soldiers, and 4 years of war have made the gap wider, not narrower. The trajectories are clear. Ukraine is growing stronger, Russia is growing weaker. And every anniversary that passes, every year that this war continues beyond the 3 days Moscow promised, widens the gap. Over 1.25 million Russian casualties. Over 11,000 tanks destroyed. Over 24,000 armored vehicles lost. Over 37,000 artillery systems eliminated. Over 135,000 drones shot down. 435 aircraft. 347 helicopters, 29 ships, 2 submarines. These are not projections. These are confirmed numbers, verified through multiple independent sources, and they represent the most catastrophic military loss any nation has suffered since the Second World War. And it started because one man in Moscow believed Ukraine would fall in 3 days. 3 questions on this anniversary. First, 4 years ago, Russia expected victory in 72 hours. Over 1.25 million casualties later, Russian forces cannot even secure the territories they occupy. At what point does Moscow acknowledge that this war is unwinnable? Or will they continue sending men to die rather than admit the truth? Second, every capability Ukraine demonstrated on this anniversary night — HIMARS, FPV drones, signals intelligence, precision artillery, elite infantry — was built or acquired during the war itself. If Ukraine has come this far in 4 years, what will its military look like in year 5? In year 6? And what does that mean for every Russian soldier still standing on Ukrainian soil? Third, 4 years of war have cost Russia more soldiers, more tanks, more aircraft, and more international standing than any conflict in its post-Soviet history. The Russian economy is strained. The Russian military is depleted. The Russian people are paying a price that grows heavier every month. How many more anniversaries will pass before the weight becomes unbearable? Think about that. 4 years, over 1.25 million casualties, and Ukraine is still fighting, still winning, still standing. Subscribe to Steel Command. Share this video. 4 years ago, Russia invaded Ukraine expecting surrender. Tonight, Ukraine sent its answer, written in the flames of destroyed Russian armor, in the silence of dead Russian radios, in the precision of Ukrainian warriors who have spent 4 years proving that their country will never fall. The world must never forget what started 4 years ago. And the world must see what Ukraine has become because of it.